Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm Keith Downey, your host, and this week has been very special as we celebrate our 1-year anniversary. And over the week, we've invited back some of the original and most popular guests. We aren't stopping today with Jordan Burke. Now, Jordan is not only the founder of Do the Harder Thing on Instagram, where he inspires thousands with his approach to spiritual and personal growth, but he's also the content coordinator at the Avila Institute for Spiritual Formation. I mean, he's known for his transition from law enforcement to a life dedicated to spiritual theology, and brings a unique perspective to conversations about faith, virtue, and really just living a life, purpose-driven life. So without further ado, good morning and welcome back to the show, Jordan.
Good morning. It's always good to be here.
Likewise. Now, Jordan, I kind of mentioned a little bit before, but it's been quite a journey from being a police officer to becoming kind of a key figure in spiritual formation. I'm curious to know, how do you feel your law enforcement background influences your spiritual approach to spiritual guidance?
So I love this question because no one's ever asked me that before, and you forced me to sit down and think about a good answer. But I think taking everything, let me back up. Primarily what I do at the Institute or the foundation, not just the content, but the spiritual warfare studies, you have to have a mind, in my opinion, for investigation, meaning that you don't have an idea and then look at evidence and research and try to make it fit your idea. You have to have a level of skepticism and follow the evidence wherever the evidence goes. And had I not been trained in, interview and interrogation and those sorts of techniques, I'm not entirely sure that I would have had that viewpoint on these things. So I think that helps a lot. I think it provides an intensity to everything I do that has to be balanced, obviously, appropriately, but like a seriousness to everything that I kind of partake in. So that's the things that kind of came to mind. But yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think sometimes a lot of people, when they think spiritual warfare, they'll automatically jump to the demonic, where, you mentioned if you have some investigative qualities, it's you can kind of root out some of the things that just might be life, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we did a show on our new podcast not too long ago called "Is the Devil Under Every Rock?" And we want people to realize that, yes, we war not against flesh and blood, but also sometimes a flat tire is just a flat tire. Right. There needs to be a proper balance in between those two things. So be aware, but don't be afraid, and don't assume that everything that negative that happens is somehow tied to something spiritually. So.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. You've made Do the Harder Thing a motto for a lot of people now. Can you maybe share how this concept has evolved in your own personal life and how you encourage others to implement it?
Yeah, maybe another time I'll tell the story of how I got to that name, but essentially outside of that, it became my motto in a time of real intense trial and suffering, to where I would go and I applied it to everything. I'd go out in the woods and intentionally try to get lost, not out of any self-harm, but just to be out and away from everything. No reception, no phone or anything like that. And whenever I came to a fork in a path, I would choose the more difficult path. It's like, okay, let's make this harder. And it was just a way for me to really master myself in a lot of different ways, and even the little things. And then later, going into everyday life, if I had to make a decision, it turned out that usually if I was struggling with the decision, the more difficult choice was the correct choice. So it was literally doing the harder thing. And that applies to everything. Should I get up and hit snooze, or should I just, get up and go pray? Well, you should get up and go pray. That's the more difficult thing. Should I don't feel good. Should I go and work on XYZ? That's the more difficult thing. You should probably go do that. So I would say maybe 90% of the time, 95% of the time, it's the right answer, with prudence and discernment, of course. But yeah, it's just been a motto that came and has proven and served me for many, many years now.
Yeah, sometimes when I see people complain or argue on like social media, like on X, I tell them to do the harder thing and just stop complaining.
Right. Yeah, it's a perfect one. I mean, are we going to complain about what's going on in the church or in our country? Or what's the more difficult thing? I would argue it's being quiet and going and praying.
Yes.
It's putting aside this, around here we call it the heresy of activism. Not to say we shouldn't do things, but we get too caught up in, I want to do something. Well, what's your place? Where are you at in the church? Maybe you're actually being called to get on your knees and pray, and that's it. And if that's hard for you, that's fine. And in fact, it's more meritorious because it's more difficult for you. So, yeah.
Yeah, so true. Spending time in silence is a hard thing to do in our daily our daily lives. It's wild. So your work at the Avila Institute, what kinds of programs or just content in general are you most excited about this year, and how do they aim to impact people's spiritual lives?
I am always excited about the High Calling program. Our High Calling program, we're in, I think, 90 different dioceses, the Mount St. Mary, several others. And essentially what we do is we get guys who are discerning the priesthood, and we put them through a program in their propedeutic year and train them how to pray, spiritual direction, get them spiritual directors, really give them a firm foundation before they go into seminary, so that seminary journey is as efficacious as it can possibly be. And for the guys who discern out, I love to say, listen, now we just have really good men floating around. You know what I mean? So they discern they didn't want to be a priest. They're going to be an awesome husband, So I always love that. And a lot of the content that we produce, we are intentionally trying to target young men and see, hey, are you called? Are you discerning? And it's been really cool to see how effective that is. So our team here that I manage, I have a guy who runs the High Calling account. We do a lot for spiritualdirection.com, and it's constantly conversations about that. And then outside of that, all of our video series, the Spiritual Warfare and Discernment of Spirits, the Into the Deep. I think we're going to be doing another one here soon. I can't remember which book it's going to be on, but those are always super efficacious, and those are popping up in parishes. So I'm always excited about that as well.
Very cool. Yeah, the High Calling program is very interesting because that, and it's just something that I thought early this morning as I was waking up. It's going to be an interesting time when we have millennial bishops and a millennial Pope. Like, it's going to be a completely different because of all the great work, like many programs like you're doing with the High Calling program, and just getting these priests, these solid Orthodox priests. It's going to be a very interesting time in the next 20, 30 years for sure.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Have there been, so based on, your work with Avila, and then also on the Instagram with Do the Harder Thing, has there been any of the surprising trends or questions from any of those that follow you?
Yeah, almost every day. And I know that you get the same thing. It's kind of wild, some of the questions that come up, but I can't necessarily think of any examples. Obviously, I focus more on spiritual warfare. So a lot of the questions are related to spiritual warfare. So you can get some really kind of out of left field questions. But the beauty of that is that I've found that it forces me to really buckle down and know my stuff, quote unquote. And if I don't, there's a beauty in telling these people, I don't know, but I probably know someone who can help you, and trying to connect them. So I think I can't give you necessarily a surprising question, but the outcome of those questions is I spend a lot more time in books and researching and making sure that, okay, this is a good question. Let's take time to figure this out. Let's walk through it together and see what we can come to. So, yeah.
That's cool. So, speaking of spiritual warfare, what happens if someone comes to you and like, what advice would you give someone who's like, I feel like I'm undergoing some spiritual warfare. What do I do?
First thing is confession. Always avail yourself of the sacraments. Go to confession. I usually have a set list of questions, and it generally falls along the line of trying to diagnose where they're at in their spiritual life. Meaning, if you're not frequenting the sacraments, that's the first thing that we need to rectify. Confession, mass, every Sunday, without fail. And if you can go more than that, fantastic. That's even better. And then on a deeper level, we're going to talk about what's your prayer life look like. Because if you're not having a conversation with God, you're really kind of robbing yourself of important aspects of the faith and protection. Living in that grace due to those partaking in those sacraments is huge. It's funny. There's there's stacks of books that I have everywhere around me. You should see the one on my desk. It's insane. And there's all this wealth of beautiful information, but I'm always astounded because it all seems to come down to one thing, whether it's the saints, the doctors of the church, scripture. Our faith is simple. Partake in the sacraments, have a conversation with God every day, pray, right? And you're going to be okay. You know, that's really the foundational principles. So your rosary, daily examination of conscience, those things, you're gonna, you know, the devil. I just read a quote recently: "The devil is more afraid of you than you are of him." If that is your day-to-day life.
That's awesome. Yeah, sometimes we overcomplicate things and try to do all these things.
Yes.
It's like, no, keep it simple. Just take the sacrament. Do, you know, make sure to go to confession, receive the Eucharist, go to Mass as much as you can. And then I like how you mentioned, you know, doing an examination of conscience. And one of the ones that I found that was very helpful is actually from spiritualdirection.com. There's quite a bit of really good, deeper examination of conscience that I've tried to utilize before I go to confession, because there's things that I just don't think about. So it's, we'll make sure to probably put that in the show notes. I'll give the link to you, senior producer Tim there. But we got 30 seconds left. Anything exciting about the Jubilee Year of Hope for you?
You know, so I'm doing a series on Instagram right now. I interviewed a bunch of people at Seek, and I asked them, what brings you hope? The hilarious aspect of that is I was not aware, shame on me, bad Catholic. I wasn't aware it was the Jubilee Year of Hope. I was literally just praying, Lord, what do you want me to ask these people? And I thought, what brings you hope? And then I come to find out it's Jubilee Year of Hope. So that's what brings me hope, is that God is moving and people are so hopeful. So.
Well, that's incredible. My goodness. Well, thank you so much, Jordan, for joining us. Now, if you're wanting to see more of Jordan, you can always go on Instagram, search Do the Harder Thing, and you'll find him. You can also go to avila-institute.org and spiritualdirection.com. There's so many places to find Jordan, but there you have it. Thanks again, Jordan, so much. And that is it for Morning Joy, where truth matters. Now, this is the last, well, not the last week. We're probably going to continue celebrating our 1 year anniversary month. Okay, that's what we're going to do. We got a full lineup all this year. It's going to be very exciting. Hang with us. Make sure to follow us on all the social medias. Just search Morning Joy Radio or GRN online, and you'll find us. Like, follow, subscribe, and we'll see you once again Monday morning, 6 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Eastern, here on Morning Joy, where truth matters. But until then, God bless, and make it a joyful Friday. We'll see you Monday.
This has been Morning Joy, where truth matters, hosted by Keith Downey. Take some joy with you today. Visit grnonline.com/joy to listen again, share a segment, or answer the question of the day. That's grnonline.com/joy.